Sarah and Michael Thompson seemed like they had stepped straight out of the pages of a modern-day fairy tale. Living in a charming suburb of Boston, they were the couple everyone admired. Sarah, a dedicated kindergarten teacher, brightened children's mornings with her warm smile. Michael, a respected heart surgeon, saved lives every day at the prestigious Massachusetts General Hospital. On Thursday evenings, the smell of homemade lasagna would drift out of their Victorian home as laughter echoed across their well-kept backyard. Neighbors watched with a mix of admiration and envy as Sarah and Michael danced in the kitchen while washing dishes, as if every day were their anniversary. "You're my anchor, Sar," Michael would say, planting a gentle kiss on Sarah's forehead before leaving for work. And she believed it with all her heart. On weekends, the couple could be seen hand in hand at the local park, feeding ducks or picnicking under the shade of an old oak tree. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, punctuated by knowing glances and gentle touches that spoke of a deep connection. At parties and social gatherings, Sarah and Michael were inseparable. She laughed at his jokes as if hearing them for the first time, while he looked at her with a blend of pride and adoration that melted the hearts of those around them. "How do you keep the spark alive after so many years?" friends would ask, amazed. Sarah would smile, her eyes shining as she replied, "It's simple. We choose each other every single day." At night, lying in bed, Sarah traced the contours of Michael's face with her fingers, thinking of how lucky she was. "Promise we'll always be like this," she whispered. "Always and forever," he would reply, pulling her closer. But what Sarah didn't know was that behind that perfect smile and loving eyes, Michael carried a secret that, once revealed, would shake the very foundations of everything they had built together. A secret that would test the limits of love, trust, and forgiveness. As Sarah fell asleep in her husband's arms, feeling safe and loved, she had no idea that her life was about to be turned upside down. The clock on the nightstand ticked away, each passing second bringing her closer to a truth that would change everything. As summer turned into fall, Sarah began noticing subtle changes in Michael's behavior. They were such small details at first that she dismissed them as her imagination. But gradually, these signs started piling up like the dry leaves in their backyard in Newton. Michael, once so punctual, was now coming home later and later from the hospital. "Emergency surgeries," he explained with a tired smile, but Sarah could sense a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. One October evening, while they were having dinner on the porch, Sarah noticed that Michael was checking his phone unusually often. The bluish glow from the screen lit up his face, casting strange shadows that seemed to hide something. "Is everything okay, honey?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. "Of course, just a delicate patient," he replied, putting his phone away quickly. Sarah swallowed hard, feeling a knot form in her stomach. It was the first time in Kwan's years of marriage that she felt Michael was distant. The following weeks brought more unsettling signs. Michael, who had always been like an open book, now seemed to have entire chapters hidden. Their conversations, once easy and intimate, became shallow. He avoided Sarah's gaze, as if afraid she might read something in his eyes. One Saturday morning, Sarah found him dozing on the couch, still dressed in his clothes from the day before. Beside him lay a half-empty bottle of whiskey. Michael had never been one to drink alone. "Mike," she called softly, touching his shoulder. He startled awake, his eyes unfocused for a moment before recognizing her. "Sorry, I had a rough night at the hospital," he mumbled, rubbing his face. Sarah nodded, pretending to believe him, but her heart was pounding. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The little lies began stacking up. a work dinner that never happened, a medical conference that wasn't listed on the hospital schedule. Sarah found herself watching him as he slept, trying to decipher what had changed. Maybe it's just a phase, she tried convincing herself, as she arranged the wilting flowers in the living room vase. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. One night, while folding laundry, Sarah found a receipt from an expensive restaurant downtown. The date matched an evening Michael had said he was on call. Her hands shook as she held the slip of paper, a wave of nausea rising in her throat. "What's happening to us, Mike?" she whispered into the empty room, feeling tears burn in her eyes. The seed of doubt had been planted, and Sarah knew she couldn't ignore it much longer. Each new day brought a silent question, a suspicious glance, a stifled sigh. The marriage that everyone envied was starting to show cracks, and Sarah feared what she might find if she dared to look closer. As the city braced for winter, Sarah felt a different kind of chill settling in her heart. A storm was brewing, and she didn't know if she was ready to face it. The day Sarah's world fell apart started like any other. It was a cold Tuesday in November, with Boston's sky heavy with clouds hinting at the season's first snowfall. Sarah was at home, grading her students' assignments, when Michael's laptop let out a soft ping, a new email notification. Normally, Sarah wouldn't pay any attention. Privacy had always been a pillar of their marriage. But something, maybe instinct, maybe the buildup of doubts from the past few weeks, made her glance at the screen. The subject line made her heart stop. Our date last night. With trembling hands, Sarah moved closer to the laptop. A voice in her head told her not to look, to respect Michael's privacy. But another, more insistent voice whispered that she needed to know the truth. "Just a quick peek," she muttered to herself, clicking on the message before she could change her mind. At first, the words on the screen looked blurry, as if her mind refused to process them. But gradually, certain phrases came into focus. "Wonderful night. Can't stop thinking about you. We need to be more careful." The name at the end of the message, Olivia. Sarah felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Her breathing became shallow, blood rushing in her ears. She reread the message once, twice, 3 times, hoping the words would change, that this was some awful misunderstanding. But it wasn't. With numb fingers, she navigated through the inbox, finding dozens of emails exchanged between Michael and this Olivia over the past few months. Photos, affectionate messages, plans for secret meetings, a whole parallel life that Sarah had no idea existed. "No, no, no," she repeated, her vision blurred by tears. Memories of the past few months replayed in her mind like a sped-up movie. The late nights, the excuses, the growing distance. Everything made a horrible kind of sense now. Sarah shut the laptop hard, as if that could erase what she had seen. She got up, stumbling toward the bathroom, where she vomited violently, her body physically rejecting the truth her mind was still struggling to accept. Looking at herself in the mirror, Sarah barely recognized the woman staring back with red eyes and a pale face. Who was she now? The happy, confident wife, or this stranger, betrayed and broken? In the days following the email discovery, Sarah found herself plunged into a world of secret investigation she'd never imagined occupying. Every moment alone at home became an opportunity to uncover more details about Michael's double life. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Sarah searched through drawers, checked bank statements, and carefully examined Michael's phone whenever he carelessly left it on the table. Each new discovery felt like a dagger to her chest. One afternoon, while Michael was at the hospital, Sarah found a folded receipt at the bottom of a drawer. It was from a jewelry store downtown, dated just 2 weeks earlier. The amount was exorbitant, far more than Michael had ever spent on a gift for her. Night after night, Sarah pretended to sleep, waiting for Michael to fall into a deep slumber. Then, silently, she'd take his phone and comb through messages, emails, and call logs. Each new piece of information was like another piece of a painful puzzle she didn't want but needed to complete. "Who are you?" she murmured, looking at Michael's sleeping face. So familiar, yet now so foreign. Sarah began following Michael discreetly. One cold Saturday afternoon, she saw him enter a downtown cafe. Through the fogged-up window, Sarah watched, heartbroken, as a dark-haired woman joined him. The two talked intimately, their hands touching across the table. So, this is Olivia, Sarah thought, feeling a mix of anger and pain that threatened to consume her. At home, Sarah created an elaborate mental map, connecting dates, places, and events. She obsessively reviewed the last few weeks and months, reinterpreting each moment in light of her new discoveries. Memories that had once been precious were now tainted by the shadow of betrayal. One night, while searching Michael's office, Sarah found a small box hidden behind some books. Inside were handwritten love letters, movie tickets, and small mementos, a museum of stolen moments that should have been hers. Reading the letters by the dim light of the bedside lamp, Sarah felt hot tears streaming down her cheeks. The words of love and promises of a future together were like stabs to her already wounded heart. "How could I have been so blind?" she wondered, her voice thick with restrained sobs. Each new discovery deepened the wound, but also strengthened her resolve. Sarah knew she couldn't go on living like this, torn between ignorance and painful truth. She had to confront Michael, lay out everything she knew, and hear the full truth from him, no matter how painful. As she carefully stored away the evidence she had gathered, Sarah made a decision. She would confront Michael, and his reaction would determine their future. The love that once seemed unshakable now hung by a thread, and Sarah was preparing for the moment that would change her life forever. The day of reckoning arrived without warning, like a sudden storm in an otherwise clear sky. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the silence in the Thompson house was heavy, laden with unspoken secrets. Sarah was in the kitchen, making tea, when she heard Michael's phone vibrating insistently in the living room. He had gone to the store, leaving his phone behind, a rare oversight that Sarah took as a sign of fate. With her heart racing, she picked up the phone. A message flashed on the screen. "I can't wait to see you tonight. Love you." In that moment, something inside Sarah shattered. All the doubts, all the suspicions crystallized into a painful certainty. She didn't need any more evidence or explanations. The truth was there, raw and undeniable. When Michael returned, bags of groceries in his arms and a carefree smile on his face, he found Sarah sitting in the living room, his phone clutched in her trembling hands. "Sar? What's wrong?" he asked, his smile fading as he saw the devastated look on his wife's face. "Who is Olivia, Michael?" Sarah's voice was quiet, but resolute. Michael's face went visibly pale. The bags slipped from his hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. "Sarah, I can explain." The confrontation that followed was like an emotional hurricane, tearing through everything in its path. Sarah and Michael faced each other in the living room, the air between them thick with unspoken accusations and broken hearts. "How could you?" Sarah yelled, her voice thick with emotion. 15 years, Michael. 15 years of marriage thrown away for what? Michael, pale and visibly shaken, tried to step closer. "Sarah, please, let me explain. It wasn't something I planned, I swear. It just happened and..." It just happened? Sarah cut him off, her voice rising. Betrayal doesn't just happen, Michael. You made choices. Choices that brought us here. The tension was palpable, almost suffocating. Sarah paced back and forth, unable to stand still, while Michael remained frozen, as if any movement might shatter what little was left between them. I loved you, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. I trusted you completely. Michael took a hesitant step toward her. I still love you, Sarah. That never changed. No, Sarah cried, stepping back. You don't have the right to say that. Not after what you did. The silence that followed was deafening. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to echo through the room, marking the seconds of a marriage in ruins. What does she have that I don't? Sarah finally asked, her voice barely audible. Michael closed his eyes, as if the question physically pained him. It's not about that, Sarah. Olivia isn't better than you. It's just, I got lost. I felt alone, even though we were married. Then why didn't you talk to me? Sarah shot back, hurt evident in every word. I was always here, Michael. Always. Hours passed, and the conversation swung between angry shouts and pained whispers. Each revelation was like salt in an open wound. Sarah uncovered details that shattered her heart. Secret meetings, whispered promises, an entire life built behind her back. I want a divorce, Sarah finally said, her voice steady despite the tears. Michael seemed to deflate at her words. Sarah, please, we can get through this. I can change. I can be better. But Sarah had made up her mind. With trembling hands, she took off her wedding ring and placed it on the coffee table. The metallic clink echoed in the room, a final punctuation to a story that once felt eternal. It's over, Michael, she said, her voice filled with a mix of sadness and resolve. I deserve more than this. I deserve someone who loves me completely. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the room, Sarah and Michael remained there, two strangers in a house they once called home. The air was heavy with broken promises and shattered dreams. I'm so sorry, Michael whispered, tears finally slipping from his eyes. I truly am. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. She knew that forgiveness, if it ever came, would take time. For now, all that remained was the raw pain of betrayal and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. When Michael finally left, carrying a hastily packed bag, Sarah was left alone in the silent house. The ticking of the clock continued, reminding her that, despite everything, life went on, and she would have to find a way to move forward, even with a broken heart. News of Sarah and Michael's separation spread like wildfire through the small Newton community. The couple everyone saw as the perfect example of love and companionship was breaking apart, and the shockwaves touched everyone around them. Sarah's parents, John and Martha, were the first to feel the impact. Martha cried for days, unable to comprehend how her son-in-law, someone she considered almost like a son, could betray her trust so cruelly. I should have noticed, Martha sobbed into her husband's shoulder. How did I miss the signs? John, on the other hand, could barely contain his anger. If I ever run into that jerk, he muttered, fists clenched. Sarah found herself in the strange position of comforting her own parents, assuring them that she would be okay, even though she wasn't sure of it herself. The Thompsons had always been the center of their social circle, and now that circle was splintering. Mutual friends felt forced to choose sides, creating painful rifts in long-standing relationships. On one particularly difficult afternoon, Sarah found her best friend, Lisa, crying on the phone. I don't know what to do, Sarah, Lisa sobbed. Michael called me, asking to talk. I feel so torn." Sarah felt a pang of pain, but took a deep breath. "Do what feels right to you, Lisa," she replied, surprising herself with her own maturity. "I don't want anyone else to suffer because of this." At the hospital where Michael worked, the atmosphere was tense. Colleagues eyed him warily. Whispers followed him down the halls. The reputation he had spent years building was tarnished, and he felt its weight with every step. Michael's family was also deeply affected. His mother, a traditional woman who had always taken pride in her son's marriage, was devastated. "How could you do this to Sarah?" she asked in a phone call laced with disappointment. "She was part of our family." The financial consequences were also significant. The house they had bought together, once the symbol of a shared future, was now at the center of tense discussions about asset division. The dream of a comfortable retirement together had transformed into cold calculations of alimony and splitting savings. Perhaps the hardest blow came from Emma, Sarah's 12-year-old niece, who had always looked up to the couple as a model for relationships. "Aunt Sarah," she asked, her eyes filled with tears during a family dinner, "if Uncle Mike and you didn't stay together forever, how can I believe in love?" Sarah felt her heart break all over again with the question. Hugging her niece, she answered softly, "Love is real, Emma. Sometimes it doesn't last forever, but that doesn't make it any less valuable or true." As the weeks turned into months, the dust began to settle. The pain was still there, but somehow, life found a new rhythm. Sarah discovered a support network she hadn't known she had. Friends who stood firmly by her side. Family who surprised her with their strength and understanding. One evening, while having dinner with her parents, Sarah realized they were laughing together for the first time in months. It was a simple but powerful moment. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" she asked, looking at John and Martha's loving faces. Her dad reached across the table, gently squeezing her hand. "Yes, sweetheart," he replied with a soft smile. "We're stronger than we thought." And in that moment, surrounded by the unconditional love of her family, Sarah felt that despite everything, there was hope for a new beginning. 6 months after the separation, Sarah was finally beginning to find her balance again. Her teaching career was thriving. Her new hobby in photography was gaining local recognition, and she'd developed a comfortable routine in her solo life. But one unexpected phone call was about to shake her world once more. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the phone rang. Sarah answered without thinking much, assuming it was Elena inviting her on another weekend adventure. "Sarah?" The voice on the other end made her freeze. It was Michael. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone more weary than hostile. I need to see you," Michael replied, his voice shaky. "It's important." Against her better judgment, Sarah agreed to meet him at a neutral cafe downtown. When she arrived, she found Michael looking pale and visibly anxious. "Sarah," he began as soon as she sat down, "I've been diagnosed with cancer." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Sarah felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. Despite all the pain, despite everything Michael had put her through, she felt her heart clench at the news. "Is it serious?" she managed to ask. Michael nodded slowly. "Stage 3. The doctors are hopeful, but the treatment will be intense." Sarah sat in silence for a long time, her mind a storm of conflicting emotions. Anger, compassion, confusion, all swirling together in a whirlwind. "Why are you telling me this?" she finally asked. Michael looked her in the eyes, unshed tears glistening. "Because, despite everything, you're still the person I trust most in the world. And I'm scared, Sarah." In that moment, Sarah made a decision that surprised them both. She reached out and took Michael's hand. "You don't have to go through this alone," she said softly. In the days and weeks that followed, Sarah found herself in a position she'd never imagined. She was by Michael's side during his chemotherapy sessions, holding his hand as he faced the devastating side effects of treatment. She went with him to medical appointments, taking notes and asking questions he was too exhausted to ask. Not everyone understood her choice. Friends and family expressed concern, worried she was putting herself in a vulnerable position. "You don't owe him anything," her sister argued during a tense lunch. "I know," Sarah replied calmly. "I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for me, because this is the kind of person I want to be." As the months passed, something unexpected began to happen. Amidst the battle with cancer, Sarah and Michael started to rediscover each other, not as a romantic couple, but as two people who shared a deep, complicated history. "I'm sorry," Michael said one evening, after a particularly tough chemo session. "For everything." Sarah looked at him, seeing not the man who betrayed her, but a fragile, remorseful human being. "I know," she replied gently. Sarah's decision to support Michael in his fight against cancer not only changed the dynamic between them, but also transformed her profoundly. She discovered a strength and capacity for forgiveness she hadn't known she possessed. As autumn gave way to winter, and winter to spring, Sarah realized she was writing a new chapter in her life, a chapter of compassion, growth, and a deeper understanding of what it truly means to love someone, not just in moments of joy, but in the darkest times as well. This surprising decision not only altered the course of their lives, but also redefined the meaning of love, forgiveness, and resilience for everyone around them. Spring arrived in Boston, bringing with it not just nature's rebirth, but also a new chapter in Sarah's life. Michael's treatment had ended, and doctors were cautiously optimistic about his recovery. With this intense journey behind her, Sarah found herself at a crossroads, facing a future full of both possibilities and uncertainties. On a sunny April morning, Sarah strolled through the Boston Public Garden, the cherry blossoms in full bloom creating a breathtaking scene. She stopped near the pond, watching the famous swan boats return to the water after winter. The scene felt like a perfect metaphor for her own life, a fresh start after a long season of hibernation. "What now?" she murmured to herself, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Over the past months, while caring for Michael, Sarah had put much of her own life on hold. Now that he was out of danger, it was time to focus on herself again. But she wasn't the same Sarah she'd been before the betrayal, nor the same person who chose to support her ex-husband through his illness. She was someone new, shaped by experiences she never imagined she'd face. Sarah decided to take a sabbatical from her job as a teacher. It was a risky decision, but she felt she needed the time to truly find herself. With her savings and the money from selling the house she and Michael once shared, she had a financial cushion to explore her options. "Are you sure about this?" Elena asked when Sarah shared her plans over one of their weekly dinners. Sarah smiled, feeling a confidence she hadn't felt in a long time. "No," she admitted, "but I think that's what makes it all so exciting." Her first step was to enroll in an intensive photography course in New York. For 3 months, she immersed herself in a world of light, shadow, and stories told through images. Her photographs, filled with emotion and depth, began to catch the attention of local galleries. "There's a depth to your work," a curator commented at a final exhibition. "It's as if each photo tells not just one story, but many." Sarah smiled, knowing each image held a piece of her own journey. Back in Boston, she began working on a photography project documenting stories of resilience across the city. It was during this project that she met James, a writer working on a book about human strength. They connected instantly, sharing stories, laughter, and a mutual understanding of love and loss. Sarah found herself smiling more, her heart slowly opening to the possibility of new love. "You deserve to be happy, Sarah," her mother said over Sunday lunch, noticing the sparkle in her daughter's eyes when she talked about James. But the path wasn't without obstacles. Sarah still wrestled with insecurities and fears born from her past experience. There were nights when the weight of everything she'd been through felt overwhelming. By the end of that year, Sarah looked back and barely recognized the woman she'd been before. She had traveled, loved, created art, faced fears, and embraced uncertainties. She was about to publish her first photography book and was seriously considering a career change. On an autumn afternoon, exactly 2 years after the discovery that had changed her life, Sarah found herself back in the Boston Public Garden. This time, she wasn't alone. James stood beside her, their hands intertwined as they watched the leaves fall. "Are you happy?" he asked gently. Sarah reflected for a moment, thinking of all she'd been through, the pain and joy, the losses and gains. "Yes," she answered honestly, "not in the way I imagined 2 years ago, but in a deeper, more genuine way." As the sun set over Boston, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Sarah felt a peace that came not from certainty, but from embracing the unknown. Her future was uncertain, filled with possibilities both thrilling and daunting. But for the first time in a long time, she was genuinely excited to see what lay ahead. Sarah had learned that life rarely follows the script we plan, but in the unexpected turns, the falls, and the fresh starts, we find our true strength and become who we really are. As the sun sets over Boston, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. The crisp autumn air carries the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of new beginnings. She opens her eyes and looks over at James, who smiles gently beside her. "Ready to go?" he asks, extending his hand. Sarah hesitates for a moment, her fingers brushing over the cover of the book in her lap. Her first published photography book, Portraits of Resilience. Each page tells a story of overcoming, including her own. "Almost," she replies, smiling back. She opens the book to the last page, where a black and white photo captures her reflection in a broken mirror. The image is powerful, fragmented, yet whole, just like her. Sarah picks up a pen and carefully writes a dedication. "To everyone who has ever felt broken. Remember, it's through the cracks that the light enters." Sarah Thompson. Closing the book, she stands and takes James's hand. Together, they walk through the Boston Public Garden, leaving behind the bench where, 2 years ago, a very different Sarah once sat alone, lost and hurt. As they walk, Sarah reflects on her journey. The pain of Michael's betrayal, the shock of his cancer diagnosis, her surprising decision to support him, the year of self-discovery. Each moment shaped her, challenged her, strengthened her. "You know," Sarah says, breaking the comfortable silence, 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. Now I realize it was just beginning." James gently squeezes her hand. "You're incredible, Sarah. Your strength, your compassion. You inspire everyone around you." Sarah smiles, feeling a wave of gratitude for James, for her experiences, even for the hardships she faced. Every piece of the puzzle led her here. When they reach the gate of the park, Sarah pauses for a moment. She looks back at the path they walked, and then ahead to the bustling streets of Boston, filled with possibilities. "You know what?" she says, a spark of determination in her eyes. "I think I'm ready for my next chapter." With that, Sarah and James leave the park, walking hand in hand toward the future. The road ahead is uncertain, but Sarah no longer fears the unknown. She's learned that life rarely follows the script we plan, but it's in the unexpected twists that we become who we truly are. As the city lights start to glow against the darkening sky, Sarah feels a deep peace. She doesn't know exactly what the future holds, but she knows this: she's ready to embrace it, with all its challenges and joys, with courage and an open heart. Sarah's story of betrayal, healing, forgiveness, and rebirth doesn't end here. In fact, it's just beginning. And what a beautiful beginning it is. Thank you for joining us on Sarah's emotional journey. Her story reminds us that, even in the darkest moments, there's always hope and the chance for a fresh start. If this story touched your heart, please don't hesitate to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your comments mean so much to us. Share your own stories of resilience or what impacted you most in this narrative. Remember, each of us has a unique and powerful story to tell. Sometimes, all it takes is the courage to turn the page and begin a new chapter. Until our next story, take care, and remember, it's in life's cracks where the light truly shines through.